Hi friends, welcome to my channel. So this is the video which is going to talk about dynamic trunking protocol, DTP. This is a Cisco proprietary protocol, which is Cisco's DTP we call it. So let's begin. And so what do you mean by dynamic trunking protocol? So it's, as I said, it's a Cisco proprietary protocol, and it is a link layer protocol which is mainly used for the purpose of negotiating the VLAN trunking link between two Cisco switches in your layer 2 network. So it basically does it's a negotiation protocol for creating a trunking link between your Cisco switches in our layer 2 network. So basically it does a negotiation of the type of trunking encapsulations. So maybe the trunking encapsulation is a .1 queue or ISL. Since it's a Cisco proprietary, it can go for ISL as well, depending on your network requirement. So, and again, DTP can be utilized either, as I said, it can be utilized using these two trunking protocols, and forms the VLAN trunking between them. There is another protocol called VTP. You should not get confused with these two protocols. This is DTP, which is used for negotiating the trunking link between two switches, Cisco switches, whereas VTP is a VLAN trunking protocol, which is majorly used for configuring VLANs dynamically on your switching network. So that's a different, totally different topic. So we can discuss that in a later videos. But right now we'll focus on dynamic trunking protocol, which is basically associated with your trunking link. And DTP protocol uses switching modes. So these are the modes that we are going to look into the lab. So there are access mode, trunk mode, as we know. These two modes are a common mode in your VLAN switching network. And the DTP switching modes are like dynamic auto, dynamic desirable, and no negotiate. So these modes are there. So we are going to see one by one first. So I've just created this mapping. So if you say, let's say you have a two Cisco switch connected back to back, and then if you see by default, if you, let's say you did not configure any dynamic or a dynamic trunking protocol on these two switches, by default it will be in a dynamic auto mode. I mean, the back-to-back connection between the Cisco switches will be in a dynamic auto mode. That is, the interface which is connecting the back-to-back of these switches will be in dynamic auto mode. So if both the sides are in dynamic auto mode, naturally that link will be a access link. So that makes sense. So the default mode on the switch ports connected back-to-back in a layer 2 network will always be a access link, unless and until you go for a configuration of the trunk link manually or through this DTP, which we are going to see. So the next mode is like let's say you have this default mode, the first default mode between these two switches. You are going to change one side of the switch. Let's say on the right side of the switch you are going to change the interface mode as a dynamic desirable. Then the link will start negotiating each other, and then the link becomes a trunk link. And similarly, if you see the third type, it is going to be, let's say you are going to create a dynamic desirable on this side, on the left side also, after creating the dynamic desirable mode on the right side. So in the third, as you seen in the third mapping, so then again it will remain in the trunk mode. So that basically what I'm trying to say here is, if you have one side auto, another side auto, it will be a access link. If you have one side dynamic auto, another side is dynamic desirable, then it's going to be trunk. Similarly, if you have one side desirable and other side desirable, then it's going to be a trunk again. And let's say if you have a no negotiate on both sides, then it's going to be access. So that is similar to the first type. You don't need to configure anything. You can use switch port mode trunk, like switch port mode access to get the access link between these two switches. So, and you can see this note, you can use a switch port mode trunk on these two ports connected back-to-back switches to enable a trunking as always, instead of a DTP. So DTP is basically to configure your trunking port dynamically. It will automatically say, let's say you have your port on your switch connected back to back. You can use this DTP protocol, dynamic trunking protocol, to configure the trunking by itself. They will negotiate by themselves once you enable this DTP on both the switches with the desirable mode. So let's go to a lab and check this out. So I have already pre-configured certain devices here, excluding these two switches. I have given the IP address, all those things. If you can see here, this PC, you will see the IP address, IP config. So you can see the IP address of 10.1.1, 10.10.1. So what I'm trying to say here is, so you can see there are three PCs on the left side, which is belong to three different VLANs: data VLAN, and the PC in the middle is the default VLAN, and the PC which is in the below is belong to the finance VLAN, and they belong to three different networks. Like data VLAN is 10 network, and default VLAN is 100 network, and finance VLAN is 20 network. Similarly, on the other end, other side, right side of that switch also connected with the similar kind of devices. So we are going to see whether they are able to communicate each other. Let's go to the PC, data VLAN PC, and check ping 10.10.10.1. so it is pinging right now, as I have configured the switch. If you see show IP interface brief, you have the first port which is connected back to back to the other switch. So let's see this configuration first. Show run. So what I have done is, you can see the port 2 is belong to data VLAN, 3 is a default VLAN, and 4 is belong to the finance VLAN. And port 1, you can see I have configured switch port mode dynamic desirable. This is on the switch 1. Let's go to switch 2 and check the same. Enable show IP interface brief. I'm using the same ports, similar ports on this side as well. So show run will give the same details. You can see here also I have configured switch port mode desirable, and the other side switch also we have configured desirable. So that's why they are in the trunk link, and we are able to communicate between the PCs. Different VLANs can be passed across this link. So let's ping the 20.20.20.2 network. They are pinging. So finance VLAN systems are able to communicate each other via this trunk link, since both these switch port FA01 on both sides is in the dynamic desirable mode. So let's bring this port as a dynamic auto mode. Let this remains in the dynamic desirable mode. Go to the switch. This is switch 2. Let's let it remains in the dynamic desirable mode. Go to switch 1 and let's configure interface FA0/1 switch port mode. To change the dynamic DTP protocol, you need to go to switch port mode and then give a question mark. You have a dynamic there, call the dynamic knob, and then you have two options, auto and desirable. We are going to change auto because it's already in the desirable mode. We have changed it. So now we can check using a CLI call, show interface FA0/1 switch port. So you can see the mode has been changed to dynamic auto. In other words, you can check it in other type, you can check it as show run. So you can see, for fast Ethernet there is no dynamic desirable mentioned here. It is in auto mode. So this is the default mode, that is why it's not showing here. But in the switch port, show interface FA0 switch port command, you can see it is clearly mentioned as dynamic auto. So now let's see whether we are able to ping the 20 VLAN from this PC to the other PC on the other end via this trunk link, whether they are able to ping. So give 20.20.1. So they are able to ping each other, because still, as we have seen, dynamic auto to dynamic desirable will also be a trunk here. so it will be able to ping each other. So that's what we have seen here. So let's move this to dynamic auto now. Just go back to dynamic auto. I'm going to default this interface, switch to interface. So right now it is dynamic desirable. You can also see show interface FA0/1 switch port will also show you dynamic desirable. Let's change it to dynamic auto. Interface FA0/1 switch port mode dynamic auto, show run. So it is default to the dynamic auto, hence it is not showing. So if you go to show interface switch port mode, it will show it as a dynamic auto. So right now both the switch are in the dynamic auto mode. Okay, you can see switch 1 is on dynamic auto and this one is also in dynamic auto. So right now you can see the port between these two switches are negotiating, since we changed this switch to mode as a dynamic auto mode of this port. So let them negotiate. So it's completed. You can see the green signal over here on these two ports. So let's ping now. Will it be pingable? So just again initiate a ping from this VLAN PC to the same VLAN PC on the other end. So it's not going to ping and it is going to give you a request timeout. That's because they are trying to reach each other through this access link. So it will reach the switch, but the switch will not transmit towards this other PC via this link, since this link is right now in an access link mode, as we have changed the interface mode as a dynamic auto on both sides. So as we have seen the modes, this is the first mode we are in now, dynamic auto and dynamic auto on both sides. So it is an access link mode, so we are not able to communicate between the VLAN PCs. So that's it. So this is what I'm trying to explain here. So when it is dynamic auto and dynamic auto, it is going to be access link. Where if it is dynamic auto and dynamic desirable, then it is going to be trunk and no access. If it is dynamic desirable and dynamic desirable, then it remains in a trunk link as well. So you will be able to, the VLANs can communicate, the VLAN information can be carried across this link. So as you know, the trunk link is used to carry multiple VLAN information. So I hope this will help you to understand what do you mean by dynamic trunking protocol and how we can configure the dynamic trunking protocol, or how we enable dynamic trunking protocol on the switch port and make a negotiation between switching ports for the trunking link, so to carry multiple VLAN information. So that's it. So this is how we can work on dynamic trunking protocol, and this is the purpose of it. And you must make a note of it. This is a dynamic trunking protocol which is a Cisco proprietary. The equivalent to this protocol is or you will say the multi-protocol trunking protocol, you would say. So we will see it on the other video. There are GARP and MBRP, MLPRP, something like that. So I will just explain you on it in another video. So as of now, I just want to point it like this is a Cisco proprietary protocol wherein you can use it in a Cisco environment, layer 2 network. If you have any layer 3, if you have a non-Cisco vendor devices or switches on the other end with the Cisco switch, then you may go for those open standard protocol and this DTP will not work. So I hope this video is useful to you, and you would have learned something about the dynamic protocols. So we will see another video with some useful topics further. Thank you so much.